Hi guys, good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate your time. I think if I had a goal for the topic this morning, it is to show you how creatives should rule the world. Someone's phone's going off there. Except just being creative doesn't cut it. You've actually got to have some sort of financial savvy behind it and real reason to be doing your creativity other than it makes you happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first part of my journey, and I'll finish with sort of more the business piece, and I think we're going to move to a Q&A. So I might get going. So this up here was my dream forever, ever. I think I was 4. I was at Ironside State School, and there's a little picture of me as a fat kid, and it says, want to be luxury women's shoe designer or want to play for the Wallabies? Legit, it's there. So anyway, throughout school, I did both. I played a lot of rugby and I designed a lot of women's shoes, and luckily I was the biggest kid at school, so I never got bullied. Anyway, long story short, in grade 12, I played for Australian under-19s in rugby and water polo. And I was playing against South Africa. I tackled a guy that was way too big for me and I broke my back. And at the time, really, I had 3 options to take in terms of like the future of my career. One was to be a professional gamer. So I played 3 games professionally: Counter-Strike, Dota, and World of Warcraft. Believe it or not, I represented Australia in 2 of them, and I was the world's best in a class at 1. And obviously there was rugby, and then there was women's shoes that was coming third. So I broke my back. And while you're in a hospital bed, it's really difficult to play computer games because you're really animated, you know, or at least I am, swearing at the screen and smashing keyboards and stuff. And I decided I'd have to, go for the third, which was the shoes. So I had no idea really about the structure of a shoe. I had no idea really about what, proper shoe design should look like. Could you flick to the next slide, please? But what I did know was that I was really, really creative since ever. And my mum always pushed me to be creative. So you can see, some of these are rubbish, some of these are good, but on the top left, I drew that when I was 5. So it's like a licorice-inspired high heel, believe it or not. It's pretty retarded, isn't it? Anyway, and it sort of like progresses into some more fancy shit, obviously. So I started putting together a portfolio of things like this, and I was like, look, London College of Fashion, man, I've been designing shoes since forever. I'm so about this. Here's my little cry sob story about rugby and this and that. You should let me in. And so anyway, after 6 attempts, the lady rang me and she said, oh, fuck it, you can come in. And so that was a Friday night, and I shit you not, on the Monday morning I flew to London. So I was 17 at the time. And if anyone hears from BBC, I'm sorry, but basically I didn't know how to write a letter. I didn't know how to wash my clothes. I didn't know how to cook toast. I didn't know how to do anything. So I moved into a 6-person share flat in London, and the next youngest person was 27. And so I grew up really, really quickly. Maybe within 3 months, I'd come back to Australia and all my friends were like, who the fuck are you? Because I had to grow up super, super fast. Anyway, so I turned up to London College of Fashion on my very first day, and I wore a singlet and canos and a backwards flatty. And everybody stared at me. Every single person stared at me. And they were just like, oh my God, what is going on? Who are they letting into London College of Fashion these days? Anyway, the first lecturer comes in and she says, the first thing she says out of her mouth, I swear to God, was, if you want to be successful in shoes, don't try and do it yourself, just work for someone else. And the last lecturer on the same day said the same thing. So I'm assuming you guys in the room can think about what I said, which was, fuck that, I'm starting my own thing for sure. So, anyway, the class goes on, everybody stays inside the design room, and they're kind of practicing to be like the next Jimmy Choo or whatever it is that they want to be. And I'm not particularly good at drawing, as you can see, whereas these other guys are doing these really incredible things. So I went out into the workshop, and I found some wood, and I was just sawing shit and making heels and doing whatever I could. And what I found out after speaking with the technicians was that the design teachers get rolled over at London College of Fashion every 3 months, which means they never build a really great relationship with any of the students, and they probably never continue that relationship onward. However, the technicians that I was spending time with in the workshop had been there 15, 25, 35 years, the three guys that I became really good friends with. And what that means is it means they taught Jimmy Choo, Charles Olympia, Nicholas Kirkwood, Sophia Webster, you name it. They taught them how to make shoes. And so something sparked in me and I was like, maybe I should take one of these guys out for a beer and we should become friends. And so we started going out for beers after work, and I was putting in the hours. I was getting there when they got there, and I was leaving when they were leaving. And I built these really great relationships. And I said, look, I really want to do my own thing. I'm willing to put everything on the line. I put everything on the line to come here already. So can you introduce me to someone? Introduce me to someone you know that's really good, Charles Olympia or whatever. Anyway, the first person they introduced me to was Kurt Geiger. He's quite a famous British designer. And the second person they introduced me to is Kat McConey, who's now a very famous British designer. And so I turned up after I got the introduction, obviously, and I said, I'll be your intern. I'll do anything you want. It doesn't matter. And I'll work for you as long as you want. I'll do anything. And they said, of course. And so I started, and I was just doing, rubbish stuff like database management and whatever, because obviously my drawing skills weren't up to scratch. So anyway, toward the end of the internship, I'd worked for them for maybe about a year, both of them. I said to each of them individually, hey, I'm really keen on starting my own brand. Would you help me? Would you introduce me to your factory? Maybe you could give me some money to make my shoes. I don't really know, but can you help me out? And both of them said, fuck that. Why would I finance someone who's going to become a competitor? It doesn't make sense, right? So I said, okay, cool. And I waited for them to go out for lunch or whatever they did, and I stole their entire database and I left. Wouldn't you? This is on camera. I'm probably going to get locked up or something. Okay, yeah, we'll bleep that bit. So anyway, I stole the databases and I was having a bit of a sulk. And I got onto the tube. And I was on the tube going east on the Central Line. And I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? And so I start Googling shoe factories in London. And anyway, there was a shoe factory on the Far East side. The guys were named Jack and George. It was like called Jack and George's Factory or something. Pretty lowbrow. But anyway, I turned up and I said to Jack and George, look, I got a deal. I'm studying shoes. I got 3 more years to go. For the next 3 years, I'll work for you for free. I'll do anything you want. I'll clean the toilets. I'll make the coffee. I'll make shoes. I'll do anything, literally. I'll drive you around. I don't care. But at the end of the 3 years, you have to make my first collection for free. So we'll do a swap. 3 years, full-time work. I'll do anything you want. But at the end, you do my first collection. And so they agreed. So for 3 years while I was at London College of Fashion, I obviously went to the college. I was making my shoes and practicing X, Y, Z. But really, I was just having beers with the technicians. And then I spent all my other time at this factory. So it came to the end of the 3rd year. This was the end of London College of Fashion. At that time, it was very difficult to get in. It was super prestigious, London College. Now, if you've got whatever it is, 40 grand, you can get in. But anyway, I had a panel. So it was the final submission. I had a panel there. We had Harrods, Harvey Nicks, and Feathers buyers there. For the ladies in the room, you probably know those stores in London. They're really big stores. And then obviously the London College of Fashion board. And so this guy that basically doesn't turn up to school turns up with a 22-piece made collection, like legit professional, like the shoe you saw at the start. And everybody was really shocked, obviously. And for the first time in luxury fashion history, all 3 of those buyers bought a piece of a student's collection on the spot, which was pretty good for like this rugby jock that used to turn up in singlets and so on. So basically, they did that. I finished on 98.5% for the entirety of my London College of Fashion sort of studying period, which is the best ever still to date. I don't know how I winged that, but it doesn't matter. I also didn't tell them that the shoe factory made those shoes, but that's, whatever. Bleep that out as well. I suppose it doesn't matter if they take the points back, do they? Anyway, so I had a spark. I was like, cool, all these people really like my shoes. I've tricked someone into making them for free. These people are starting to give me money. What should I do? Well, I should go home with my shoe suitcase and I should start spamming every shoe store in the world, right? Because everybody will want my shoes. So I literally went home to my unit and I looked up every single shoe boutique in the entire world. There's like 10,000 of them. And I didn't know about Upwork or anything, so I farmed the data myself. And I basically started spamming them. And I had my little story. I didn't have a lookbook. I didn't have anything. I had like some shitty 3315 pictures or whatever phone I had at that time. And I uploaded them onto like a PDF. And I just wrote this story about, you know, rugby person from Australia, youngest luxury women's shoe designer from Australia. I think possibly at the time, in terms of a professional, I was the youngest one in the world in luxury shoe. And I sort of had this whole story, and I sent it to everybody. So I sent, I don't know, I'd say 999,000 emails, 999. And I probably got about 3 yeses or so, like, yes, you could come and see me, or you could come and see my assistant, or, you know, something like that. So anyway, I turned up to these stores, and they took them, so maybe I was at about 6 stores at that time. And obviously, you know, the season was coming up. I think I was doing a spring-summer at that time. And I knew that this spamming tactic wasn't going to get me where I wanted, unless I did it for another 10 years, and I could get 300 stores in that matter. So I started asking people around, and I was like, do you know anything about big fairs or anything in luxury fashion or in the goods? And they said, yeah, there's this show. It's called Premier Class Tuileries, which is kind of like the highest rated luxury, like luxury shoes and handbags and umbrellas and all this kind of stuff, accessories show. I said, cool. Who's the person who runs it? And someone said, Sylvie Peratt. So I went home, I went on LinkedIn, I found Sylvie Peratt, and I just started spamming her. And I said, I need to be in the show. I really need to be in the show. She wouldn't reply to me. So I asked some more people, someone gave me her email, and I started spamming her again. She wouldn't reply to me, so I asked some more people, someone gave me her number, so I started like trying to call her. Anyway, at the end of God knows how long and how many times I tried to contact her, she wrote me a message, a text message, and she said, please don't ever contact me again. And I replied to her and I said, I'm coming to your office. So I packed all my stuff in my shoe suitcase, and I got on an EasyJet and I flew to Paris and I went into her office and I said to the lady at the front, hey, I've got a meeting with Sylvia. I know she's really busy. I'll just set my shoes up over here in the corner and I'll wait till she's ready. It was this big like wooden loft. You could see the glass paneling up there and I could see her. I mean, she looked like the lady on LinkedIn. So she was up there. And so I just sat over here and she saw me. I knew she saw me. And she made me wait for 6 hours. Literally 6 hours. It was like 8 p.m. I didn't have a hotel, I didn't have anything, but I wasn't leaving until she saw my shoes. Anyway, she finally came down and I like sort of hustled her over and I gave her the whole story and I said, look, like literally heart to heart, I bet my entire inheritance on this. No one else has ever done something like this to you. Do you think I'm going to fuck up if you let me in the show? And in the end, she said, God, you could just be in the show. So the best thing about the show is it's this big, big tent in Paris. And you're literally situated next to the up-and-coming designers. So you've got, you know, Nicholas Kirkwood and whoever else around you. So you've got this little booth and you set up all your shoes and you've got these amazing people around you. And if you are lucky enough to be situated next to a really amazing person like Kat McConey, it means that all the best buyers in the world are going to Kat McConey's little stall. And so I literally spent the entire time just standing there at this wall watching Kat's stall. And I'd see a Nordstrom buyer come in. And as they're walking out, I would just be like this, like I'm security, and push them into my stall. Slip a business card down the back pocket, and off we go. Anyway, so this kind of tactic really worked. I think everybody in fashion, particularly luxury fashion, is very sort of, I don't know, highbrow and pretty vain, and I don't think anyone kind of had the balls like an Australian to do something like that. So it worked. And I was coming back straight after the shoe show. I had to like organize all of the production and so on. And I was like, well, I can't be a famous luxury shoe designer from Australia if I'm not in an Australian store. So I need to get into David Jones, surely. The dumbest thing about fashion is that to get into David Jones, you need a PR company. And to get a PR company, you need to be in David Jones. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway. So I was coming home for Christmas to hang out. I thought, I'll just go into David Jones. Why not? The lady named Kylie, who I found on LinkedIn, hasn't been replying to me, so I'll just turn up. And so I went around the back, in Sydney, and I went into, the indoor elevator, and I pressed level 8, and it wouldn't let me go to level 8. So I said to the lady at the site, hey, I've got a meeting with Kylie. We've got a buying meeting. Can you let me up? And she said, what's your name? I said, Jock Fairweather, and she flicked through the Refidex thing, and my name wasn't there, surprisingly. And so she said, you need to leave or I'm going to call security. So I had a bit of like a sulk, and I walked back around the front, and I was in David Jones. I was kind of I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to make a plan, obviously. And I saw kind of like this elderly gentleman who was a concierge for David Jones. And he was wearing a Girard-Perregaux watch, which is a really old Swiss watchmaker. And I have a Girard-Perregaux watch too, which I was wearing, luckily. So I started chatting with him, just about Girard-Perregaux watches, 5 minutes. And then I said, look, John, I got a meeting with Kylie upstairs. I don't know how to get there. I need you to show me how to get there. And he said, cool, no problem, come with me. And he took me to a different elevator, and he swiped me up to level 8. So anyway, there's a lady standing at the front, and I said, hi, miss. I've just got off the plane from Geneva. Lies, I'd been like in Australia for a month or something. I'm really jet lagged. I'm feeling really sick. I just want to put my shoes together. I want Kylie to come and see them. I just want it to be done. I might need the toilet. Where's the toilet, by the way? Anyway, she's like, that's okay, honey, come with me. And she took me over to the boardroom. I set up all my stuff. And a lot of offices, the walls don't go all the way to the ceiling. And I could hear on the loudspeaker the lady at the front, the admin lady. She calls Kylie and she goes, hi, Kylie, Jock Fairweather's here to see you. And she goes, how the fuck did he get in here? You could hear it on the loudspeaker. It was awesome. I wish I could record that. Anyway, she storms in. I honestly lobbed a shoe at her. I told her the whole story. And I was like, yo, seriously, you will have to call security if you don't take these shoes. I am not moving. I'm glued to this seat. So she took the shoes. So first person in luxury women's shoe fashion history to get in David Jones in their first season. Anyway, I've got probably 1,000 stories that are similar, but I thought that they were good ones. Should we go to the next slide? So the story goes, after I got past the first season, I was in 25 stores, which was a pretty good effort. And one of the key elements of why my first season went so well was obviously the desire I had, but the way I was able to think around problems that came up. And not all of the stories that I've got are just about manipulation and white lying or whatever it is, not straight lying. Some of them are actually quite good. And so in the world of startups, or starting a company, let's just say, it's really important that you can build a community or build a following around whatever this product or service it is that you're offering. And you can get them to kind of agree to buy it or like it, etc., before you actually go ahead and produce it, right? So, this is totally hindsight thinking, but I did it at the time, so it doesn't matter. One of the stores, Wolf & Badger in London, this was the most typical one. I went into the store and I said to the lady at the front, hey, I've got all these shoes, they're really lovely, can I please meet the buyer? And she said, oh, I'll have to get your number and I'll call you back, which was just a blatant lie. And so anyway, I kind of said, okay, well, I'll wait for your call, whatever. So I went across the road to the coffee shop, literally across the road, and I just kind of sat there. I obviously linked in the buyer so I could, I knew what they looked like. And I just sat at that coffee shop. I was buying coffees, doing my laptop work or whatever. And I knew sooner or later the buyer was going to turn up. Anyway, she didn't turn up. So the next day I came back and I asked the lady at the front, can I see the buyer? And she said the same thing. And so I went back to the coffee shop. And after about 3 weeks of hanging around this coffee shop, I made heaps of friends. I was buying people coffee and we were talking about shoes and all this kind of stuff, right? This is in Notting Hill in London. But I did this similar sort of play in many different places. So what happened was, in the end, I met this lady and she took the shoes, right? But I'd now built a friendship circle of maybe 30 people who were really interested in my shoes. They liked me because I bought them coffee and, whatever. And basically, once she'd ordered the shoes and they were on the way, I called all these people or messaged all these people and I said, look, there's an opening of Jock Fairweather shoes at Wolf & Badger. You should turn up. It's going to be awesome. We're going to put on champagne and canopies and all these things. and you can check out the new shoes. So then I called the lady who owned the shop and I said, I need you to put on champagne and canopies and all this stuff because I got a shitload of people coming to see the shoes. Anyway, it all happened. The next day, the lady called me who owned the shop and she said, I've never seen it before. We have none of your shoes left. They're all gone. Every single one is bought. I've never seen it ever. When can we get the next lot? So that little instance there is basically the method to the madness of how I got 100% sellout across 25 stores in my first season ever. No one's ever done anything close to that. I did it without digital marketing. I did it without newsletters. I did it without anything. It was building relationships and spamming. I don't spam anymore. I was old Jock. Anyway, these are the lessons that come from my shoe journey that are really important, I think, for creatives, because obviously at the beginning, I really was a heavy creative. You know, all I thought about was how cool or how amazing or what materials I could use on these shoes. But as sort of my business developed, whether I meant for it to or not, I started learning more about the financials and the economics and the way of sales and the way of managing the product and the quality of the product and so on. And all of these things, you know, my knowledge started growing. So the last part of the story is I was visiting Geneva, just randomly. I was visiting my mum. She was consulting there. And I met a guy at a bar. His name's Philippe. And we just started chatting. I bought him a whiskey and, you know, we were just talking shit. And he said, I'm starting a Swiss Luxury Beliefs, which is a luxury fashion conglomerate, which means basically they're buying up Swiss companies in all of the different sectors in fashion. So like a leather goods, people who do scarves, people who do glasses, people who do whatever. And would you believe it? He hadn't bought a shoe company yet. So I was like, oh my God, look at this. And so he started chatting and he said, cool, come and see me tomorrow. He'd showed me all these companies that he'd bought. And so I went home. That night I didn't sleep. I did 644 renderings on Illustrator based on the collections that he'd bought of shoes. So I turned up with a, printing this thick, and I said, I could do anything you want, I want in. And basically the idea of a luxury conglomerate is they have, a group of accountants, lawyers, product managers, salespeople, marketing people, et cetera, and that one group manages all the brands they look after. So it's really streamlined, it's really cost effective, and I also don't have to do any of that bullshit anymore. So basically, he said, cool, I like you, and I said, 75% for $2 million. And he said, done. So when I was 21, I did that deal, and I was basically a fancy designer. I just rocked around 2 days a week, I'd draw shoes. 2 days a year, I'd draw shoes, and all the rest of the time, I'd screw around on yachts or go snowboarding or whatever. I mean, that's a cool lifestyle. However, I grew up in Papua New Guinea in the Philippines. Both of my parents, all of their businesses in the developing world. So the connection between luxury fashion and the developing world, I'm not sure that there is a connection. I think we're both on the world. That's about the closest connection there is. So I started thinking about where I'd come from and what I was actually doing. I was just following this dream. It was totally selfish. I just wanted to be a famous shoe designer because, I don't know, that's just what I thought. I mean, it was my third option anyway. And I started, I just started thinking. And toward the end, it started getting a bit messy with the conglomerate, and things weren't going as well as they should have. And I think after 3 seasons, based on them changing relationships that I'd built, we'd gone from 25 stores to 3. So 3 was the same number I had on the very first day I pitched those shoes, right? So I was pretty distraught. Actually, I was so distraught that for 3 months I couldn't get out of bed. I was that anxious, I was that fucked, I didn't get out of bed for 3 months. And I kind of said, that's it, I'm going home. I'm going to come back to Brisbane. I want to do something impactful. I want to do something with people I love. I want to help people. I've had an extreme learning journey over this time. And the number one reason entrepreneurships and startups is so important, I believe, is that in that 3 to 4 years between when I was 17 and I was 21, I learned 1,000 times what I did in the first 17 years of my life, for sure. And now I'm addicted to that, and every year that extrapolates. Whether I did well or not is irrelevant. The fact is I followed it all the way through, which means I had everything on the line, which means I tried everything ever to make it succeed. And that's when the true you comes out. And that's when, if you do go well or you don't, the second time around, whatever it is that you do, it's going to be that much better because you're not going to make those same mistakes. So before I go into the second part of the story, I just want to touch on some of the things that I've got up there. I probably live my life by saying it's called burn the boats. And basically it means, you rock up to Gallipoli and you don't leave your boat there. You flame it. Because if you leave your boat there, you're always going to be in two minds. Like, fuck, all these dudes are shooting at me. I should just get on the boat and leave. And you're going to, disappoint country or whatever, however it goes. I'm not good at history. But the point is, if you burn the boats, there's only one way. And if you have only one way and you're dedicated to go that way, the chances of you being successful are way, way higher than if you're always thinking twice about what you're doing. Hard work and connections always win. Talent doesn't. That's a fact. The real true reason that I won in the shoe game was because the girls and guys that were in my class used to just turn up whenever they want, smoke ciggies on their breaks, which was like every 5 minutes, practice drawing fancy shoes, and whatever. And that doesn't impress anyone that's higher than you in the food chain. But if you turn up before the technicians, you leave after the technicians, your entire room is covered in shoe pictures and famous stories and all these kinds of things. All these things in this vision starts playing with you. And you can see from the story that I told you that my hard work prevailed above all of the people with all of the skill and all of the talent in the world. I already told you about the 999. And creativity is nothing without commerce. I started truly as a creative, and now that I'm kind of like a business person or whatever you want to class it, I really understand the value of creativity. In fact, I think creatives can be the best leaders in the world. And the reason is people like you and I can see things that other people can't. We can see futures that we wish to believe, whether or not they're going to happen. Everybody else thinks linearly. And the entire story about the fashion, the shoes, was that every obstacle that ever came up, I found a new way around it, a way that no one else had ever done before. And it was because I had no idea about the way people were meant to do it. I just wanted it. So if you're an artist or you're a graphic designer or you're a whatever, unless you've got a really great inheritance, I know you need money to live. And so it's really important that you think about how you can sell your creativity, how you can position it, how you present it, how you represent yourself. All of these things really, really matter. But in the end, if you don't know the actual path, as long as you work hard and you're not willing to accept no, you can be fine. But throughout that journey, you'll learn how to turn that long-distance creative play into a step-by-step process to achieve. And that's exactly what we've done with Little Tokyo 2. By the way, you saw it at the bottom, fashion sucks. It's just the hardest industry ever, so not worth it. Sorry for anyone in fashion. So this is where I'm at now, Little Tokyo 2. So that's what we stand for and we love doing, and it's true. So the story continues. When I came back to Brisbane, I had 10 friends that I'd remain in contact with, and they each had started their own thing. There was a fashion label, there was a coffee shop, there was a graphic designer. It was all different. Some at uni, some not. But what I really wanted to do, because I mentioned that I was really sick at the time, was I wanted to play golf. It clears my mind, it's chilled, I get to spend time with my friends, and we get to talk about whatever. So I asked them all, can we play golf early in the morning, whenever? And all of them individually said, I'm too busy. I said, right, how are you so busy? You're like just a graphic designer, I don't get it. Like I had to manage all this stuff, 25 stores, all these things, and I was playing golf in London. And they said, oh, I'm bored, lonely, lost, unmotivated at home. No one give me direction, no one to bounce my ideas off. These are all of the typical answers you get from anyone who's starting their own thing. And all 10 of them, I went and saw them individually at their work or over coffee, and they said exactly the same thing. So I had money, obviously, from the shoes, and I said, well, I'll buy a house. All 10 of you live there. How much rent do you pay? And they said, you know, whatever, $500 a week. And I said, cool. Well, you guys move in, you pay $500 a week, and I'll live there too. And my job will be to open doors for you. So through my experience with fashion and all these ups and downs I went through, I'll teach you. I'll stop you from making the mistakes. And if I had Dan von Furstenberg and the ex-marketing director of LVMH on my board in shoes, I'm sure I can get you in front of whoever you want to get in front of in Australia. And they said, cool. So we started looking, and one night we went into an old Japanese restaurant. It was called Little Tokyo in Spring Hill. It'd been going for 50 years. At that time, 50 years. It was the oldest Japanese restaurant in Australia. And when I walked in with my two friends, there was a lady standing there. Her name was Michiko O'Brien. Her name is Michiko O'Brien. And she's 97 years old, was 97 years old at that time, wearing a kimono, holding a sake cup, shaking, and she had tears rolling down her face. As I'd walked in, I forgot to mention, a Collier's developer walked out, so a building developer that I recognized. And I said, 3 people for teppanyaki? And she gave us this huge D&M about the legacy that she'd built at Little Tokyo, and how much she cared and that she didn't have kids to pass it on to and so on. And she said, I don't want it to be a 45-unit block. I want this to remain forever. And I said, cool, man. Well, I'll keep the name and the color and the furniture and the structure, and you can eat here forever for free. I didn't tell her that I was going to change it to a Chinese restaurant, but whatever. She never ate there anyway. She just comes in every quarter and does a little tour and looks around. So I said, look, but this is all the money I've got. And so I bought that building for, let's say, 3/4 of what it was worth on the market within 2 days. And I called up my friend who's a builder, and I said, look, I'm going to build this hectic house, and we're going to have Xboxes, and we're going to do all this crazy shit. I need you to come help me build it. So he said yes. And every day at 4 o'clock, we'd turn up to this building. I know it's illegal, cut this bit out as well. And we'd start building, literally. Every wall, all the destruction, everything. We did everything except the electricals. And over an 8-week period, we'd turn up at 4. At lunchtime, I'd go across the road to the Snap Fitness. I'd have a shower, put on a suit. I'd come back, and I'd get all these people to come through on a walkthrough, like my friends, and then they'd tell their friends and whatever. I'd say, this is the dream, and we're going to have this amazing place where everybody's businesses go great and whatever. And they say, yeah, it'd be awesome to have a boardroom or mentors or whatever they were saying. And I'd be like, yeah, that's what we're doing, no problem. I write these things down. They'd leave. I'd go back to Snap Fitness, put on my workers' gear, come back, and we'd build what they said. At 10:30 at night, I'd go home. I'd literally from scratch make this collateral up that said, yep, exactly what they said. Boardroom, mentors, these kinds of people, whatever. And I'd send it to them. I'd say $500 a week or, whatever the cost was. And they'd sign it. And when we opened, we had, I don't know, maybe it was 20 people. So it turned from this house, permanent living house, into this sort of casual come and do your work and hang out house. And we had 20 people. So that was about 2.5 years ago. It was December 14, 2014. And so we started with this one little building, and I'd turn up every day. And every day, these guys, my friends and my new friends, would say, this is my problem, or this is who I need to meet to do X, or whatever it was. And I'd say, cool, no problem, give me a day. And I'd get on the phones, and I'd go and meet people, and I'd find these people, and I'd hand it to them on a platter. And that was the whole deal. The essence was you'd work next to and around people that you really liked, that were like-minded, and then I'd do everything in my power to help you succeed, whatever that may be. Next slide, please. And so basically, this is what we stand for, I suppose. And that's what that essence explains. Working with people that you really like and you really love, and doing everything you can to help them in whatever it is that their success metric is. It could be to be a graphic designer that just makes $100,000 a year and looks after their family and gets that kind of time, or it could be to build the next Uber or whatever it may be. Next slide, please. And if I could paint you a picture without pictures, that's it, right there. That's what we stand for. That's how it goes. Is that a good picture? I hope so. We just put that on shirts. So, next slide, please. So, from that point, I suppose we started gaining traction. At that point in time, there wasn't really that much of a startup and small business scene. Sorry, wasn't much of a startup scene. There was River City Labs, who were a really great provider, but it was just kind of like one sole operator. And when we turned up and we started making all of this noise, of which is pretty much my only skill in the world, things started getting serious. And people started, coming to us, and within 3 months, I think we had 100 friends hanging out at this building. And so, the story goes, there was a tender that came out. It was by the Brisbane Marketing, by Brisbane City Council, called a building called the Capitol. And the Capitol is meant to be the flagship sort of startup space in all of Queensland, where all of the most talented, amazing people go and they do their thing. Anyway, we knew the tender was coming out, and I knew all the people that were going to apply for it. So I had a look, and I was like, what's one thing that none of the other competition have? I mean, they're more experienced, they're older, they got more money, etc., etc. The one thing that none of them had was 2 buildings. And so I called up my mate, and I said, I need a building. Go and find me one. And he found me one in Petrie Terrace. And in like 4 weeks, we put together this launch event, we jammed desks in there, and we did this big launch event, and we filled the whole place up. The next week, the tender came out, and it was like the Capitol, the flagship, Brisbane, whatever. And I applied with my tender, and the first line said, first startup space in Australia with 2 spaces. Anyway, we ended up winning the Capitol, so we're in the Capitol. And you can see up here our why, what we do, and then what we've been able to achieve through this exact essence, right? So you can see that we want to inspire and grow young businesses, and that's what we love. The 3 main things that we do, we open doors and we remove barriers. So you want to talk to the CEO of Origin, you want to talk to the head of innovation at Optus, you want to talk to the guys who run the fund for startups at Flight Centre, I'll get you there tomorrow. You get surrounded by really incredible people. In our offices right now, we have artists and graphic designers and the like. We have startups such as Lawcadius and Citrus, which are really high growth scaling startups. And we have Google and Shopify in our offices. So you come into the office as part of the membership, and you can literally be sitting next to those dudes. They've signed off on a culture code, which is part of the vetting process, which says all kinds of things, like everybody uses a broom, so it doesn't matter if you're from Google, you clean up your own dishes, and if you walk past rubbish, you pick it up. And to things like must love puppies. So it's about a 40-step document that everybody has to sign off on, even the staff members of whatever company that is. So you know that everybody in that space feels exactly the same way about the things that we stand for, which I think is really important. And the last piece, which has taken us about 3 years to develop, which is something that's really important for creatives, I believe, which is goal setting and accountability. Whoever joins at whatever level, it doesn't matter. It's compulsory to sit down with us. We help you set 1, 3, and 6 month goals. And we keep you accountable fortnightly to them. You turn up and you say, these are the things stopping me or us. These are the things I need to progress. And we literally give it to you on a platter. Whoever it is, whoever you want. My job in the organization is literally to create opportunities, to meet all these people just in case you wanted to meet someone from Sequoia Capital in the US, a really big VC firm. It's my job to open all of those doors. And our how, which is kind of our proof, is we've helped more than 650 businesses start. So that's literally a founder or a founding team with an idea come in, start a company. So far, not one has failed. And I mean, that's kind of like a fake statistic because it's pretty hard to fail as an artist, right? I mean, in the scheme of things, you can continue doing art forever, obviously. But in terms of really technical things, we've helped 72 of those companies go from that one idea at the very beginning, whatever that was, to a 10 or more person company that's sustainable and graduates. So in terms of like, let's say, jobs or in terms of a vision, that's our boundary. Taking a founding team to an 8 or 10 person team and they graduate. As part of that, obviously there's been money raised. We've helped raise close to $50 million for all of the companies within, for whatever it was that they wanted to pursue. And some of them have been artists, and some of them have been Citrus or some of the really high scaling startups. Next slide, please. Oh, that's really easy to read. There's part of the culture code. I'm not good at graphics anymore. I stopped practicing. Anyway, you can see there. Next slide, please. So what are the real lessons that I found throughout starting Little Tokyo? I've been able to create over 1,000 jobs. I see thousands of small companies every year. I spend all of my time just meeting really incredible people and seeing what could I do to help them succeed, even if it's a shoulder to cry on. So get your why and your vision set. I think that's really important. Like I said at the beginning, if you don't have what your dream end goal is, how are you ever going to reach a dream end goal? I mean, that's pretty simple, right? It's really important to create responsibility and feel responsibility. It is pretty stressful to start your own company. But when you start working with others and getting staff, what happens often is people just start delegating. They're like, well, I don't want to do the graphic shit, you do it, and so on. And they just pass it down. But it's really important to create this transparency and this open communication in your company. So that if I said to you, go and do this, and your schedule was already full, and you're already rammed with things, that you can say back to me openly, hey, I literally can't do it when you've asked me, so I either can execute it in 2 weeks or whatever it is, or I'm going to need you to find someone else to do it. Because if people don't have that responsibility and they don't feel open to do that, everything starts falling apart. Done is better than perfect. There's probably like 100 spelling mistakes in this slide deck, and I'd like to blame it on Jacinta, but it was me. But the point is, a lot of us, particularly creatives, can spend years and years and years trying to perfect the perfect piece of art or the perfect sculpture or the perfect whatever it is that you're doing. And the problem with that is, with any product, with any service, with anything, which a lot of you probably have realized, you've perfected it, it's taken you 2 years, you've got no money for it, obviously, and then you've put it out there. And all the people that you thought would really love that product or idea have just gone meh. That's happened to me a lot of times. So how do you get around that? It's obviously a mindset shift, and this is like really the core essence of startup culture. And it's, I've got an idea, a product or a service. I'm going to get it to a point after I've spoken to the customer base who I think are going to buy it. So they've told me like what they'd like, how they would like to receive it, what they'd pay, the timing, etc. I go and build the first version of that, a real shitty version, one that can be used. And I put it in their hands, and they say, cool, and I don't like this, and I like that, and you should try this, and whatever. And you go, great, no problem. You go away, and you do that, and you hand it back again. And they do it again and again and again. And that is the true way to succeed as a creative, as a business person, as an anything. It's not about your perception of what people want. It's about building something that people actually want and are asking for. That's the only way you can truly succeed. And it's really difficult to have that mindset as a true, free, spirited creative. And I understand that. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't build something that people are going to buy, you're fucked. And the last piece of advice that I have is to be extremely aware and reflective of your strengths, weaknesses, and decisions. I suppose to put that in a more simple way, try not to make mistakes twice. I've done it plenty of times, and that's kind of the importance of what I built at Little Tokyo 2. I've made all the mistakes in business of all of you combined at once. So before you're about to fuck something up, ask me. But what's really important when you make the mistake or when you have any kind of conversation, a good, bad, ugly, is when you step away from it, reflect on that conversation and say, how could I have done that better? How could I have prepared better? How could my body language have spoken better to get the outcome that I wanted? And if you aren't reflective on every single thing that you do and every single move that you make, you're going to continue to make these mistakes. Next slide, please. So here's a little picture of some of our stuff. I already gave you that picture with Marvin Gaye and Whiskey Wednesdays anyway. And the next, please. That's it. Thank you.